Right now on Tech Radio, what the?
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. This week in association with PwC, helping you unlock the full potential of AI and digital transformation. We'll have more on that with Barry Whelan later. But first, on episode 1037, we're looking back on the biggest stories of the week, including the sentencing of another FTX defendant, price increases for YouTube, and you will never guess who's just joined the space race.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, Niall Kitson, our editor-in-chief. We were talking last week about Amazon and they're forcing everybody back into the office. Now we're finding another tech giant is getting into something similar.
Kind of something similar. I don't want to call it shenanigans, but we are seeing this realignment of the tech sector with a lot of people being let go. IBM themselves came out, as their CEO, Arvind Krishna, said they were looking to get rid of about 7,800 jobs, largely thanks to AI and automation. During the last week, since we were last broadcasting, we got news of an unknown number of workers that were being quietly let go and being asked to sign NDAs about the terms of their leaving. Now, when we discussed this previously, I think I was a little bit unfair when I talked about this being attack of the middle managers, just trying to prove their worth and show that they're actually doing stuff. In IBM's case, I don't think that's accurate because as far as we know, and here's a wonderful term, the resource action involved, it's not called firing people anymore, it's a resource action, affects people in the 50 to 55 age bracket with between 20 and 24 years of seniority.
So it's not a problem with middle management trying to, do things for the sake of it, because it's the middle management who are being fired. I mean, resource actioned.
It's for me, it's guys higher up the food chain. The guys with actual institutional knowledge who actually know what they're doing, who are value creators because they've got so much experience, that the perception seems to be that, okay, you guys are costing us a lot of money. We will replace you effectively with AI to help those lower to middle managers achieve your level of sophistication and competence without, at the wage level that we're paying them at the moment. So here's the thing, Dusty. I mean, if you are a senior manager, are you worth as much as a lesser manager plus an AI? We're talking hypotheticals here. Well, what do you think?
The old phrase comes to mind. I don't know the exact phrase, but it's along the lines of, great, you got somebody cheaper. So how much is it going to cost to redo the job when they don't do it right the first time?
Yeah.
As in, you can get somebody in cheaper, but they will make some bloody mistake which needs to be corrected, and then you have to pay for the correction, and it all ends up costing more than it would have cost with somebody with experience in the first place.
Sure.
I think it's a thing that's been going on, I think, for years and years and years and years, and you tend to want to let go of the older end so that you can get the younger end in. And it's just economics.
Right, because the older guys cost more.
The older guys cost more, but the other problem is that the older guys also cost more to get rid of.
Yeah.
Especially if they have had 20 years service with the same company. Because what's happening now, as I'm sure you're well aware, is that the older end, 50 plus and stuff, they've been the type where you go and you work for a company and you might work for them for 10 years or maybe even 20 years. All right. People are coming in now into the workplace. They'll work for one company for 2 years and then they go looking for another job that pays more and is moving up the ladder. And that's how they move up the ladder, by jumping from company to company to company to company. And they only stay 2 years.
Yeah.
So there's another side of that then with IBM. If they are going to take in younger people, they're all going to leave anyway.
Yeah.
Staff retention is a huge issue.
It is. And is that something that would be regarded as healthy in corporate culture if you don't have people sticking around to climb the salary ladder?
Do you know what? It's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of another. And I think you probably need a mix. It's great to have people coming and going. New people always bringing new energy and new ideas and new ways of looking at things in the office. Whereas if everybody stayed, you just be in your own little bubble.
Yeah.
But if you are losing people if you're losing all of your people with experience at the top end, then I don't think that this is anything particularly new.
Yeah. Now, we're not going to see IBM implode over this. I mean,
of course not. No.
They employ something like 230,000 people worldwide. Yeah. I mean, they're absolutely huge company. So 8,000 it's single digit percentages. It's just the model does throw up this question, and it could potentially set a precedent. Like, what is the point at which it becomes unprofitable to support somebody's career?
Depends, I suppose, on the company and the position and the person.
Yeah.
I had a very interesting conversation in RTE years ago when I was a baby DJ. All right.
Yeah.
And I joined RTE first. I was mid-20s or whatever. Young, inexperienced, cocksure. I knew everything. God. Anyways, Gay Byrne was a huge star at the time, and he was number one on the radio ratings, and he was presenting the biggest TV show in the country at the time, The Late Late Show, all right? And there was word that Gay Byrne may defect to one of the new commercial radio stations. And there was a big meeting behind Gabo's back about what to do with this. And everybody was talking, what if he left? And they were like, kind of, if he left, this is a disaster. Because I held up my hand, wanting to chuck him by tuppence worth and make an impression. And went, well, what if he's in a car accident and he died tomorrow? That did not go down well. However, years later, Gabo retired. Pat Kenny became the new biggest, greatest, whatever thing. And Pat Kenny did jump ship and leave RTE, and he went to News Talk, as we know. And do you know what the amazing thing was? RTE didn't fold. It didn't collapse. Do you know what I mean? The listenership didn't suddenly implode. They lost couple of percentage points, but everything just kind of chucked on.
Yeah, and I think another really good example is what happened with Ryan Tubridy, who RT had spent years telling us was a generational talent. He's now on a very, I'm going to call it a niche broadcaster in England, making an awful lot less than he was in Ireland. And do you know what? The figures in his slot are actually up. So sometimes it's a matter of giving the right guy in the right place, the right time, a chance.
It's not just about the one person. And when you get into that, an organization is an organization, and the organization is always bigger than any individual. Sports team is always bigger than any individual. A collection of people is always bigger than any individual, and you will always survive the loss of a key person.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's my top.
In summary, there is room for upper management, but that's not to say that middle management plus AI isn't going to put a lot of pressure.
Oh, listen, come here. I find it really funny because I'm working with people in their 20s and 30s. I am literally telling them to use AI. They're like, wow. Oh, I don't know. I'm afraid. What if it takes my job? And I went, if you don't use AI, someone else will take your job. And I mean it. All right. Because AI is a tool, and you use that tool to do your job better and more efficiently. It's like when the internet came along first and everybody was convinced, oh, my job will be gone to the internet. No, the internet has become a tool, and it helps you do your job more efficiently. And it's the same with AI. Anyway, listen, Get me off this soap dish. Our next story is Caroline Ellison. Now, I know you love stories to do with Caroline Ellison because she is somebody that you would absolutely love to, and you never would, but you would spit in her face if she was standing in front of you.
No.
You have a little, every time you talk about her, it's almost, I can see you foaming at the mouth going, it's disgusting what she did.
Oh, no, that's unfair, Dusty. But anyway, what her and her co-defendants did, starting with the founder of failed cryptocurrency exchange FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, who is now serving 25 years in prison. Miss Ellison, on again, off again, girlfriend of Mr. Bankman-Fried, has been sentenced. And she was facing something up to, I think it was 110 years in prison. You know, these ridiculous potential sentences they come up with in America. Same with Bankman-Fried. He was facing, more than 100 years and all that. He's doing 25. So she was looking at 110 years, but because she contributed so much to the prosecution of Bankman-Fried, who was the big kahuna and all this anyway, her sentence has been reduced down to 24 months in what they call Club Fed, sort of a federal minimum security prison. Now, because it's federal prison, she will actually end up serving most of that. And she also, now the terminology is she is to forfeit $11 billion. Now, I mean, that apparently 22 billion went missing under her and Bankman-Fried's watch. Have it, okay, 11 billion has gone missing. Maybe she still has some money, but it looks like for the rest of her life, some portion of the money that she makes will have to go towards clearing this debt, which will probably never, 90% likely will never be cleared or never even have much of a dent made in it, to be honest. But it's just it's kind of a millstone around her that is never going to go anywhere. And that's something that they're pretty good at in America. They're pretty good at punishment. They're also pretty good at punishment of people that have stung powerful people. As we know, Bankman-Fried was involved in making political donations to both sides of the spectrum in America, which, in fairness, there's not a lot between them. So that's kind of where it is. She spilled her guts. She made life much easier for the prosecution. She gets a very, very light sentence. So there you go. 2023, the year of crypto collapse, where we saw the reckoning for Bankman-Fried. We are now seeing the reckoning for Caroline Ellison on a much, much smaller scale. I mean, the funny thing is, this was a huge case, and as soon as the trouble emerged, the rats departed the sinking ship and went, it was all the boss's fault.
And that's why the boss was resource actioned.
Yay. Nicely done.
Still to come, we've got the space race story. But first, I had a lovely email, Niall. A lovely email from my friends at YouTube.
All right.
And you know that I have waxed lyrically about YouTube and not having to watch the commercials, and I've got a family subscription and it's $17.99 a month. And compared to what I was paying for Spotify, the extra €2 or €3 was absolutely worth it. And I'm still very much of that opinion. Anyway, I had a lovely email from YouTube. Mm-hmm. And they said basically to allow them to continue to improve premium and support the creators which I watch. The premium will be increasing.
Right.
The premium is increasing. It's $17.99 now. Guess what the new amount is?
Oh, God. $17.99? Whoosh. Okay. Well, I mean, you'd want to keep it under 20. You'd want to keep it under €20. Surely.
The new subscription is $25.99.
Unsubscribe. What the hell?
You don't even have to. I'm wondering what is going on here, because that is like YouTube writing to me going, off.
Pretty much. Yeah. We don't need your money. We're just going to make it ridiculously expensive for the minor how would you say, the minor convenience of not being exposed to ads.
It's unreal, like, and it made me smile because they're going to support the creators you watch. Now, listen, in all fairness, there's a load of people making stuff on that, right? And one of the things I've found, YouTube, this is not good for my mental health, all right? Because there's no ads, the ads don't annoy me, so I don't click off as fast, all right? But what I find myself is it's endless scroll of just going from video to video to video to video. And this is what happens on YouTube. We were talking about it earlier in another, before we came on air, but it's kind of like you watch the first 5 seconds. Nah, next. Do you know what I mean? And I can spend an hour just looking at my phone going, nah, next. And then I'll watch something for 2 or 3 minutes. Nah, next, bump. And it's kind of like, I took Facebook off my phone for that very reason, because I was just scrolling through stuff that was kind of like, it was okay, but it was actually not of any relevance to me or of any interest to me. I was just scrolling through, and I'm finding I'm doing the same thing. It'd be like sitting in front of your TV and just channel hopping all the time. Yeah. So I think that is a bad use of my time. I literally waste an hour of my life doing that. So I think now YouTube have very helpfully come along with their very nice email listener saying the price is going from $17.99 to $25.99. Dear Dusty, please off. And I will. So, listen, let's get into this story about the space race. Who is joining the space race? I wouldn't have thought of this.
Yeah, neither would I. I mean, the big players in the space race, of course, the US, the ESA, European Space Agency, Russia, China, big economic blocks, of course. And now we are getting India joining the space race as well. So they've put in $290 million, which... I mean, looking at the scale of the budgets of the ESA and NASA, I mean, I'm going to call it cost effective, put it that way. Plan is to get a lunar sample return within 3 years. So we send something up, we get something comes back down again. A Venus launch in 2028. There's something we hadn't heard of before. And an orbiting lab in 2035. So it's actually, timeline and fairly ambitious one. I know, Dusty, I'm impressed, but I don't want to say worried, but I'm interested to see the viability of said timeline.
Well, why not? Because, I mean, China has been to the moon. Japan are doing stuff there. Why not India? I think the thing for us, because we're so far away from India, is that we don't just really think about it on a day-to-day basis. But if I'm not mistaken, India is the most populous country on the planet.
True.
It's an entire subcontinent. There's over 1 billion people there. Yeah. And you think about India and you don't think of it as a Western standard country financially. Mm-hmm. But I bet there's plenty of money there. So, yeah, why not? Why not? It'll be really interesting in years to come as to people staking a claim on certain parts or all of the moon.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, they've given themselves 36 months to get cracking on the moon. So that's fairly short,
Yeah, it is. Well, my guess is that they're well on the way. They're well on the way. You don't make an announcement like that and then start from scratch. But if you look back at the famous speech of John F. Kennedy, we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And he says, and I want a man on the moon before the end of this decade. That was a huge thing. And they literally were coming from scratch. Almost.
They got it.
So good luck to them. Listen, final news story of the week. Google is making money off climate change denialism? No.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Get this. We are eternally stuck between the argument that big tech would say, we are not a publisher, we are a platform. This is the argument. We very much disagree, but anyway. So here is what's happened. And maybe potentially a cautionary tale of what happens when you lean in too close to one of those arguments. So there's a right-wing publication called the Epoch Times. You might have come across it in your Twitter timeline. And they published a number of stories going against the grain when it comes to climate science. Let's just call it for what it is. It's outright climate denialism. So there was a campaign group called Global Witness who just conducted a story on Epoch Times, and they found 3 stories that, absolute claims of climate denialism, misinformation, what's Google doing with or about this stuff. And they discovered that Google actually made a pile of cash off it. Instead of just, removing said stories, they actually made $1.5 million from misinformation over the period of 12 months that these stories were online. So there were submissions made. Please take the following articles down. And Google went, okay, right. There was 3 versions, I think Spanish, Brazilian and English. The Spanish and Brazilian translations of all 3 stories were taken down. In the English, I think there was 1 translation was left up because it technically didn't contravene Google's terms of service. So, the bad guys won a little bit, I suppose. But there you go. If you're using a platform like Google, that defense doesn't always wash.
No, and it never did either. Anyways, listen, there we go. That's the news for this week. Now, as always, thanks for keeping us up to date.
From TechCentral.ie, this is the award-nominated Tech Radio from TechCentral.ie.
Digital transformation is a term that came into its own during the pandemic when organizations were forced to embrace technology at an unprecedented speed. Today, how are organizations continuing on that journey, and are we seeing real-life IT crowd type people getting into the boardroom? Niall had a great chat with Barry Whelan, who is technology consulting partner with PwC, and got some great insights on this topic.
It's almost an odd conversation we're having today, because one of the lessons from the COVID era was that if companies don't evolve, if they don't change the way they do things, if they don't embrace technology, if they don't find more ways to operate in a more lean, efficient manner, they will die. One would have thought this is a message that doesn't need to be revisited or retaught, but it seems to be an ongoing thing that businesses still have to be taught to be efficient. How is this still happening at this late post-COVID stage? Did the lesson not land, or is it just a matter of a new generation of businesses, or businesses have maybe gone, okay, COVID is over, let's build ourselves back up to where we were?
It's a good question, and I think people have felt the need for transformation more due to the pandemic period that we're in. But the need to transform has always been there. Industries move around, they get reshaped, they come together. I think a great example of that would be, how technology has moved into the financial area, and the fintechs are really driving changes in the banking sector and ensuring that people's experience improves and the product offerings they have. So disruption is already there. In some industries, it's been moving at a slow pace, some at a fast pace, but it's always been there. It's just, I think we felt it more, and organizations, for the reasons of existence, have, during the pandemic period, were very, very conscious that they needed to transform. So it's something that CEOs have always on the top of their agenda. How do we transform? Why do they need to transform? Because the market doesn't stay still and the customer doesn't stay still. And there are new expectations, there are new markets to go into, and there's always pressures to grow and also to cut costs. So CEOs are constantly on their agenda seeing how can they achieve those goals, and are constantly reviewing their organization to see, is it efficient? Is it in the best shape it can be?
Of course, one of the main lessons that we sort of alluded to there earlier was the issue of digital transformation. Only one part of what you do, but a lot of companies had to embrace a lot of technology very quickly. I imagine we're not seeing that cadence anymore, but has the mindset still persisted that, yeah, we're going to have to keep upgrading, and that's fine, that's part of what we do now? Or Is it still the case, or is there a case as in with some SMEs where they're like, we put up a website, we put up our own e-commerce store. We don't need to worry about technology now. That's done.
It depends, I suppose, on the scale of the organization and what the challenge is. I mean, when thinking about business transformation and technology-enabled business transformation, it's about, is this something that we need to do at an enterprise level in terms of all the functions of the business? Because what we're facing in terms of our business model or our revenue model is not going to be the one that's going to take us forward in the future. So at an enterprise level, having a vision about how do we transform the customer experience, how do we transform sales, marketing, and how we interact with the customer. And the example you were using, the digital transformation there of having an e-commerce store. But actually, it's much more than that, because in every enterprise, when we think about transformation, we need to think about it as end-to-end, or traditionally people would have said in the front office and the back office. So the front office is very, very important, but we can't forget the back office either. We need to see, are our systems fit for the future across finance, across HR, across supply chain, across R&D, and then see how we're organized, our operating model, and are our platforms fit for the future to bring us forward, to be competitive, to deal with disruption, and indeed help us drive our agenda forward to going into new markets or to growing our top line, as well as being efficient about our bottom line.
It requires some very healthy lines of communication between departments. So how do you manage to maintain that? I mean, I imagine there's a natural inclination to say, well, we don't want to say we're not doing things particularly well, because it might not be a sign that there's a solution out there that we can help. It might be a sign that we're underperforming. So how do you get people comfortable in having those sort of conversations?
Well, I think the first piece is going back to that, what I said earlier, which was before embarking on a business transformation, the entire organization, led by the C-suite, need to be clear about what are we trying to achieve and why we're trying to achieve it, and bringing everybody on that journey. Because by its own definition, transformation, it's not a small project. It's not an upgrade. It's not trying to, improve a certain aspect of technology. It's actually about how do we upgrade our organization as a business? How do we transform it? So at the very, very start, the executive, the sponsor, the CEO, the CFO, the CIO must be clear about what we're trying to achieve and setting that out and why you must achieve it. What's the imperative here? What's the set of imperatives? And then it's about ensuring that in designing that end state that we want to transform ourselves to being, what does that look like? What is going to be the increase in customer satisfaction? What's going to be the increase in revenue? How are we going to be more competitive as an operation? And what new products and offerings are we going to put out there? And very importantly, how do we engage our employees on the culture of the organization to make sure once we do that, it sticks? And that's very, very important. So in terms of how do you bring people on a journey? Well, everybody will rally around a vision if they realize the imperatives on it. And it's important to communicate that and continue to communicate that, because embarking then to execute the transformation. So once you have the vision in place and you're clear about the objectives and the targets, transformations fail, one, because that's not done well, but to a certain degree, they mostly fail during execution, right? And that's about how do we then bring everybody on that journey, because everybody has a job to play in terms of transforming roles, the way work is done. Data is another big area that needs to be gotten particularly right as well.
Hey, Barry, in any organization, when it comes to that C-suite, there is a cast of characters. There's always the CFO, there's the CEO. These things are fairly predictable. As we come across things in our lives, like the importance of privacy, like the importance of data, like the importance of AI, the pressures within an organization to stay current, to stay contemporary, must move along with that. And does that force a change in the cast of characters in the C-suite, or are these things pretty much at it would be nice to have a chief data officer or a chief privacy officer, but maybe we don't need one right now?
So I'm seeing a few things. It depends on which particular industry that you're looking at any particular point in time. The things you mentioned are important in every project, regardless of whether somebody is in a very, very senior role or not. But absolutely, in certain industries, particularly regulated industries, the idea of a role which is elevated around data and around risk/regulation those roles, whilst they're not probably the sponsors of the project, they're pretty much in that suite. They're in the program boards and are pretty much directing the shaping of programs. They have their own objectives for what the transformation needs to deliver, and they're very, very important that they're there. And we need to, as organizations, need to make sure that they're present in all of these transformation programs. That's the most important thing, because sometimes they may exist in the organization, but they actually may not be part of the programs directly. They need to be front and center.
So in looking at projects or in the past, what have you found to be any particular red flags where you've seen an organization go through a project and you're thinking, oh, actually, something has gone awry here. X is going to lead to Y down the road and potentially a project failure?
I suppose there's a number of things. I suppose the top three I would put there would be, if you notice that a program is actually a business transformation program or a technology program of any regard is starting to drift, it can be a result of, has it got strong leadership and strong sponsorship? It's struggling to get the resources. It hasn't got the funding. That's a clear sign. And that's pretty much a hard thing to get past. Programs won't be successful unless there's, a very, very senior person setting the vision and driving the program continuously and keeping people motivated on the end goal. Can come down to actually things as basic as poor planning. Transformation programs are very, very complex, particularly ones with technology as the element to it, which is nearly every business transformation program. So the effort and the expertise required that goes into the planning and then the execution of that plan can be underestimated and undercooked. And that will show up very, very quickly as soon as teams start to deploy and to make the changes. Other areas where there are red flags is that can include in designing the new organization or designing and implementing the new technology, little consideration has been taken to what should be the change in the operating model of the organization. Because inevitably, if you're transforming the business, there will be new roles will change, work will shift around, new responsibilities, processes will be streamlined. The operating model is pretty much always affected. And so in any business transformation, technology deployment, if we don't see that somebody is responsible for preparing the organization, number one, to design the new organization and changes to it for the new transformed state it'll get to, and also preparing the employees and engaging the employees in the new way of working, there are serious red flags, and it's very, very hard for a program to achieve its objectives, or indeed potentially not to complete.
Spare moment for person in a business who very often has the least sympathy, being the CEO. When it comes to managing a project, any sort of business transformation project, and selecting a partner that they should work with, what things would you consider essentials?
I would say there's 4 critical things you need to look for in a partner, and these are driven by the fact that business transformations are very, very large. Even one that looks at a function like finance and HR, never mind at the entire enterprise, they're complex undertakings. So there's very few organizations that have the capacity and the bandwidth to do that themselves. So partners are essential. They bring expertise, they bring in industry expertise, and they give you the ability to deploy and to manage and structure a transformation program, because they do it in many other for many other client organizations. So there's 4 things that are very, very important. One, ensuring that partner's vision and objectives align with the strategic objectives of the program. Have they done this before? Can they add value? Have they a strong point of view of what the transformation should look like from their experience elsewhere? So that's key. You want to look for a partner obviously has a proven track record in business transformation, and even better if they've done it in your industry, because they'll bring and they'll know what the particular requirements are in transforming, things like regulatory requirements, what the competitive set and landscape looks like, and what the data issues are that you've come across. They'll be able to assess you very quick they'll meet you where you are, where you're starting from. They'll have a very, very good view from listening to you, how you need to transform, and they'll challenge you. That's important. They have comprehensive support. So, and this is key. So you need to ensure that partner offers support throughout the transformation process. So that's from planning. And I talked earlier about if planning isn't done well, that can be a big issue, through to execution and on to help you monitor and help you set you up for success, to monitor and see how the benefits being realized, and also then to challenge you to optimize and go further. So that end-to-end support can significantly enhance the success of any organization. And then the last thing, which is very, very important, is will this partner actually add value in the sense that they'll bring innovation, they'll bring ideas, and they'll bring approaches that really, really improve upon the strategy and the transformation that we're trying to achieve and help us accelerate that time to benefit. Those things are key. And they're the sort of things that you find in a partner who have a strategy capability, who can help shape that transformation, that strategy, that vision piece. They have the capability then to help you plan and execute. And maybe as part of the transformation, it's not about then ending up with the work being done differently internally. It's about partnering with somebody who can provide you with the managed services, maybe to execute the work, or indeed just to manage the ongoing technology that has been deployed and making sure you're kept current and the innovation flows to you directly. We call that in PwC the full equation.
And that was Barry Whelan, Technology Consulting Partner with PwC, chatting with Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some of the other stories online, including...
We've got Elon Musk putting a timetable on his unmanned mission to Mars. eNet and National Broadband Ireland come to a deal. And Telegram gets a get out of jail card in France.
You'll find all of those and more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and with RT Radio 1 Extra, of course. And do remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now also on YouTube. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, take care. Thanks for listening.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.